The sun rose slowly over the endless plains of the Wild West, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. The wind carried the dry, warm scent of grass and earth across the hills, whispering through the tall, golden stalks that stretched as far as the eye could see. In this quiet and open land, Ethan Calloway rode alone, his horse moving steadily beneath him. Ethan was a strong man, lean and weathered by years on the frontier, but there was a calm kindness in his eyes that made people trust him immediately. Ethan's life had been a series of journeys through open plains, dense forests, and rough mountains. He knew how to track animals, find water in dry rivers, and survive when storms roared across the land. Yet, despite all his experience, he always remained alert. There was something about the plains that demanded respect, the way the wind could shift suddenly, the way animals moved silently, and the way danger could appear in a moment. That morning, Ethan was following a trail he had seen the day before, curious to see where it led. The path was faint, mostly worn by wild animals, but he noticed something unusual. Tiny footprints pressed lightly into the soft soil. At first, he thought they might belong to a small animal, but as he studied them, he realized they were human, small human footprints, far too small to belong to a grown man or woman. Ethan frowned and guided his horse carefully toward the trail. The prints seemed fresh, pressed into the earth during the night. He followed them cautiously, listening to the soft whispers of the wind and the distant calls of birds. After a while, he noticed the prints stopped abruptly at the edge of a narrow canyon. He dismounted, patting his horse gently. "This doesn't look good," he murmured. He moved closer to the edge, peering down. There, at the bottom of the canyon, he saw two little girls sitting on a flat rock, hugging their knees and looking frightened. Their dark hair was tangled, and their small dresses were dusty from the long walk. They didn't notice him at first, but when the wind shifted, one of them looked up and saw him. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she clutched her sister's hand tightly. Ethan held his hands up to show he meant no harm. "Hey there," he called gently. "I'm not going to hurt you. Can you come up here?" The girls hesitated. They whispered to each other in a language Ethan didn't understand, pointing toward the trail that led deeper into the canyon. He realized they must have been lost for some time. Carefully, he spoke again. Softer this time. "I can help you. You don't have to stay down there." It took a few moments, but the older girl nodded slowly. Ethan scanned the area and found a sturdy vine hanging from a nearby tree. Using it, he tied a loop and tossed it down to the girls. "Hold on to this," he instructed. "I'll pull you up." The girls hesitated, but the vine looked strong. And with a whispered agreement to each other, they gripped it. Ethan pulled the first girl up slowly, making sure her small hands didn't slip. She reached the top safely and collapsed into his arms for a brief moment, exhausted and trembling. He set her down gently and helped the second girl in the same way. When they were both safe, Ethan crouched to their level and offered a warm smile. "You're okay now. You're safe." The girls didn't speak, but they relaxed slightly, feeling the safety in his voice. Ethan noticed their small, frightened eyes darting toward the canyon, and he realized they must have been separated from their family. "We need to get you someplace safe," he said. "Can you walk with me?" They nodded, clutching each other's hands. Ethan helped them along the path, careful to keep them away from any sudden drops or loose stones. He noticed that the girls were skilled at moving quietly, as if they had learned to survive in the wild. Yet their fear was obvious. Their small hands trembled, and they looked around constantly. As they walked, Ethan talked softly to them, telling them stories about the plains, animals, and the stars that would shine at night. His voice was calm and steady. And gradually, the girls began to relax, even giggling quietly when he made a small joke about a fox that had stolen his lunch once. After some time, the girls stopped to rest near a small stream. Ethan knelt and cupped water in his hands, offering it to them. "Drink," he said. "It's cool and fresh." They drank carefully, and the oldest girl smiled faintly at him. For a moment, Ethan felt a spark of hope. These girls were brave. And perhaps, with his help, they could be safe again. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and Ethan knew they needed to move before it got too hot. He looked around the area and spotted a small copse of trees nearby. "We'll make camp there for a while," he said. "You can rest, and I'll keep watch." The girls followed him silently, too tired to talk but trusting him. Ethan gathered some dry wood and started a small fire, careful to keep it low so it wouldn't draw attention. He knew the Wild West was full of dangers, not just wild animals but also men who might not have good intentions. For now, though, the girls were safe. As the fire crackled softly, Ethan watched the girls play quietly with sticks and stones. Their laughter was faint but pure, a sound that filled the open plains with warmth. He realized that life on the frontier was not just about surviving, it was about protecting those who could not protect themselves, about offering kindness when the world seemed harsh. Evening came, and the sky turned shades of pink and purple. Ethan pointed to the horizon. "See those stars coming out?" he said. "Each one has a story. Maybe one of them will watch over you tonight." The girls looked up, their fear momentarily forgotten. Ethan smiled. "Rest here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll find your family. I promise." That night, Ethan kept watch by the small fire, listening to the soft whispers of the wind and the gentle breathing of the girls. He thought about his own life, the long journeys, the lonely nights, and the quiet moments of peace. And in that quiet, he felt something shift inside him. Protecting these girls wasn't just about survival. It was about courage, heart, and humanity. As he stared into the darkening sky, he didn't know what challenges tomorrow would bring. But one thing was certain. He would face them with the same steady heart he had always carried. The plains were wide and wild, but Ethan Calloway knew that even in the harshest land, human kindness and courage could shine like a bright star. And somewhere in the shadows of the canyon, beyond the firelight, a pair of watchful eyes followed silently, the eyes of a mother searching desperately for her lost children. Ethan had no idea she was close, but he would soon meet her, and their paths would change forever. The fire burned low in the small clearing as night fell over the plains. The stars sparkled brightly above, casting a gentle glow over the land. The two little girls, exhausted from their long day, had curled up close to each other, their small bodies wrapped in a blanket Ethan had made from an old horsehide. Their breaths came in quiet, even rhythms as they drifted into sleep. Ethan sat nearby, sharpening a small hunting knife with practiced hands. Though the blade was mostly for utility, he liked to keep it ready. The quiet of the night wrapped around him like a soft cloak, but he did not let his guard down. Out here, anything could happen. From a sudden storm to a wild animal, wandering too close. Yet, despite the vigilance that came with his years on the frontier, his mind kept wandering back to the girls. "They're brave," he murmured to himself. "Braver than they know." As he looked up at the horizon, a faint rustle caught his attention. At first, it was just a shadow moving among the trees. But then he saw the figure clearly. A young woman emerged from the dark, her movements careful and quiet. She was tall, with long dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, and her eyes sharp and alert scanned the clearing before her. Ethan rose slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Who's there?" he called softly. The woman froze. Her eyes widened when they landed on the girls, and then she stepped forward cautiously. "My children," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with both relief and fear. Ethan kept his posture calm and non-threatening. "It's okay," he said. "They're safe. You can come closer." The woman hesitated for a moment, sizing him up. There was a wariness in her gaze, a question that asked whether he could be trusted. But when she saw her daughters' faces, pale in the firelight but safe, her resolve broke. She ran the last few steps and knelt beside them, gathering them into her arms. "They are safe," Ethan repeated softly, giving her space but keeping a watchful eye. "I found them near the canyon. They were lost." Tears ran down the woman's face as she clutched her children. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice catching. "I thought I thought I had lost you forever. Ethan nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest he had not expected. There was something powerful about a mother's love. The strength, the fear, the relief, all in one. You found them now, he said simply. They're okay. The woman introduced herself as Ayanna, and between quiet sobs and smiles, she explained how they had gotten separated during a sudden storm earlier in the day. The girls had wandered into the canyon, afraid and unsure of which way to go. Ethan listened carefully, nodding as she spoke, his mind already considering the next steps. We should keep moving, he said after a while. It's too late to go back to your home tonight. There's a small grove a few miles from here where we can rest safely until morning. Ayanna nodded, still holding her daughters tightly. I will follow you, she said. I trust you. The trust in her voice surprised Ethan. It was not given lightly, especially in these lands where danger was common, and strangers were often threats. Yet, he felt a connection forming. Not just with her, but with the family he had helped reunite. They moved carefully through the moonlit plains, Ethan leading the way. The girls held their mother's hands tightly, looking up at her for reassurance. Ayanna walked steadily, but her eyes never left Ethan. She watched how he moved, how he adjusted to the uneven ground, how he made sure the path was safe. Every small act of care made her heart soften further. Along the way, Ethan taught the girls a little about the night. See those stars? He said, pointing to a small cluster that shimmered like tiny lanterns. Those are the hunters and the travelers. They'll guide you if you ever feel lost. The girls listened, fascinated. Ayanna smiled, grateful for the calm tone that Ethan kept. You know a lot, she said quietly. Ethan shrugged. I've learned from the land, he said simply. It teaches you if you listen. The grove came into view just as the first signs of dawn began to tinge the horizon with soft gold. Ethan guided them to a sheltered spot among the trees, where a small stream ran nearby. This is safe, he said. We'll rest here until the sun rises fully. Ayanna knelt beside her daughters, brushing the dust from their hair. They're tired, she said, looking up at Ethan. Thank you for keeping them safe. You don't need to thank me, Ethan said. It's what anyone would do if they could. I just happened to be here when you needed help. Ayanna studied him for a long moment, noticing the quiet strength in his expression and the gentle care in his hands. Not everyone would, she said softly. Many would have ignored them. Or worse. Ethan shook his head. I can't ignore someone who needs help, he said simply. The morning passed quietly. Ethan helped Ayanna gather small branches for a fire and set up a little area where the girls could play safely. He taught them a few simple games, and for the first time in many hours, laughter filled the grove. Ayanna watched them, her heart lightening as she saw her daughters smile and run freely. As the sun climbed higher, the four of them sat by the stream, sharing a simple meal of dried meat and fresh water. Ethan listened as Ayanna told him about her life, how she had been living with her daughters after losing her husband to illness, how she had worked hard to keep her children safe, and how much she feared losing them to the dangers of the plains. Ethan listened quietly, respecting her space. But he noticed the way her eyes softened when she spoke of her daughters, and he felt a quiet admiration for her courage. She was young, barely 20, but she carried a strength and determination that impressed him deeply. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found you, she admitted after a while, looking at him with gratitude. You saved them, Ethan shrugged, brushing a hand across his neck. I just did what I could, he said. You saved them too, by not giving up. Ayanna smiled faintly, but her eyes lingered on him. There was something about his calm courage, his patient care, and the way he treated her children as if they were his own that stirred something inside her. She realized she felt a trust and warmth she had never felt with a stranger before. The rest of the day passed with small, quiet moments. Ethan showing the girls how to skip stones across the stream, Ayanna picking berries for a light snack, and all four of them laughing at the tiny adventures that came from exploring the grove. By evening, it felt as though they had known each other far longer than a single day. As the sun set behind the distant hills, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, Ethan stood watch again, just as he had the previous night. Ayanna sat nearby, her daughters leaning against her. She looked at Ethan, silently thanking him for his courage and kindness. In that quiet moment, she realized something she had not expected. It wasn't just the safety of her children she felt grateful for, it was the steadiness, courage, and warmth of the man who had rescued them. A man who had appeared out of nowhere and, with quiet strength, restored hope to a mother and her children. And deep in her heart, Ayanna knew that their lives had changed that day. Not just because her daughters were safe, but because she had met someone who could be a part of their future, someone she could trust with her heart, as well as her children. The plains were vast and full of challenges, but for the first time in a long time, Ayanna felt a glimmer of hope and safety. She had found her daughters, yes, but she had also found a steady hand, a kind heart, and perhaps the beginnings of something more. Ethan, standing tall in the twilight, could not yet see the path ahead, but he felt a quiet certainty that whatever challenges came next, he would face them with courage and with the family he had helped reunite by his side. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink as Ethan Calloway led Ayanna and her daughters away from the small grove. The girls skipped behind their mother, their tiny footsteps light on the soft earth. Ethan rode steadily ahead, his horse's hooves making quiet impressions in the dirt, eyes scanning the open plains for any sign of danger. The journey was not long, but it was filled with challenges. The terrain of the Wild West was unpredictable. Rocky paths twisted through hills, small streams meandered across their route, and tall grasses hid unseen dips that could trip the unwary. Yet, Ethan moved with the ease of someone who had spent his life reading the land. He guided the family carefully, pointing out safe spots to step and warning of loose stones. "Watch your step here," Ethan said gently, as they approached a narrow section of the path. "The rocks can be tricky," Ayanna nodded, gripping her daughter's hands tightly as they crossed. The younger girl stumbled once but was quickly steadied by her mother. Ethan smiled at the small scene, feeling a quiet satisfaction. Moments like these were small, simple, but important. Every safe step brought them closer to security. The girls chattered quietly as they walked, asking questions about the land, the animals, and the sky. Ethan answered with patience, telling stories about the plains and the creatures that lived there. He spoke of foxes that outsmarted hunters, of deer that leaped gracefully across the hills, and of owls that watched silently at night. Ayanna listened with a soft smile. There was a calm in Ethan's voice, a quiet confidence that put her at ease. She noticed the way he treated her daughters not just with care, but with respect. He spoke to them as if their thoughts mattered, as if they were already part of his concern, part of his responsibility. Around midday, the sun climbed high in the sky, making the air hot and dry. Ethan found a small patch of shade beneath a cluster of trees. They stopped to rest and drink from their water supplies. Ethan pulled out a small metal cup and filled it with fresh water from a stream nearby, offering it first to the girls, then to Ayanna, and finally to himself. "Drink slowly," he advised. "We don't want to run out too fast." The girls sipped carefully, their faces glowing with relief from the cool water. Ayanna watched them, and then looked at Ethan with gratitude. "You've been very kind," she said quietly. "I don't know how I would have managed without you." Ethan shrugged modestly. "I just did what anyone would do," he said, though his eyes reflected the pride he felt in helping them. "But you were brave too. You never gave up." Ayanna smiled softly. She had faced many hardships in her short life, but Ethan's presence made the path forward feel lighter. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet assurance that even in the wide, wild land, everything could be managed with care and courage. As they continued, the landscape began to change. The plains gave way to rolling hills, and the path narrowed into a small valley surrounded by rocky cliffs. The wind picked up, carrying the scents of distant forests and wildflowers. Ethan paused and surveyed the area, noting the best route forward. "We need to be careful here," he said. "The path gets narrow, and the rocks can be slippery. Keep close." The girls held their mother's hands tightly, following Ethan's lead. At one point, a small stream crossed their path. Ethan tested the stones with his boot before stepping across, and then extended his hand to help Ayanna and the girls. Each step was careful, deliberate, but with his guidance, they all made it across safely. During the afternoon, a distant sound caught Ethan's attention, a soft rustle, almost like movement through the grass. He stopped and held up his hand, signaling for the others to wait. He scanned the area with sharp eyes, his senses alert. "It's just the wind," he said after a moment, relaxing slightly. "Or maybe some small animals. Nothing to worry about." Ayanna studied him as he moved forward, impressed by his attentiveness. "You see everything," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. "You have to. The land is beautiful, but it's also full of surprises. If you're not careful, trouble can find you before you even notice." The girls giggled at Ethan's serious tone, but they trusted him completely. By now, they had come to see him not just as a rescuer but as a guide, a protector who understood the land and the dangers it held. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Ethan spotted a small hill that would give them a good vantage point. "We'll climb this hill and set up camp," he said. "From there, we can see if the path ahead is safe." The climb was tiring, especially for the girls, but Ayanna encouraged them gently. "Almost there," she said. "We'll rest soon." When they reached the top, the view took their breath away. The valley stretched out below them, dotted with trees and streams, and the distant mountains glowed pink in the evening light. Ethan pointed toward a cluster of trees near a stream. "We'll make camp there," he said. "It's safe, sheltered, and has fresh water." Ayanna nodded, her eyes following the direction he pointed. She felt a deep sense of relief. For the first time that day, she allowed herself to relax, knowing they were close to safety. As they made their way down the hill, the girls ran ahead a little, laughing as they chased each other through the grass. Ethan and Ayanna walked together, their conversation quiet but comfortable. She asked him about his life, how he had learned to survive, what adventures he had experienced, and why he had chosen to roam the plains alone. Ethan spoke modestly, sharing small stories about his travels, the animals he had tracked, and the people he had met along the way. Ayanna listened intently, drawn not just to the tales but to the man himself, the way he moved, the care in his words, and the quiet courage that shone in every action. By the time they reached the small grove near the stream, the sky was painted in deep shades of purple and orange. Ethan set up a small fire, careful to keep it low and controlled. He gathered dry wood and arranged stones around the flames, ensuring the girls could play safely nearby. The girls ran to the water, dipping their hands and splashing gently, their laughter echoing through the grove. Ayanna watched them, a soft smile on her lips. She then looked at Ethan, who was tending the fire with steady hands. "Thank you again," she said softly. "You've done so much for us today." Ethan shook his head. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. "You've been brave, and you've kept your children together. That's what matters most." As the fire crackled and the evening deepened, Ayanna and Ethan shared a quiet moment together. There was a sense of trust between them now, built through the shared experience of the day. They had faced challenges, navigated the rough terrain, and kept the girls safe. And through it all, a bond had begun to form, a bond of respect, admiration, and perhaps the first hint of something more. That night, as the girls fell asleep against their mother, Ethan kept watch again. The stars above were bright, and the wind whispered softly through the trees. He reflected on the day's journey, the challenges, the laughter, the small victories, and he realized something important. The true strength of the Wild West was not just in survival, but in the courage to protect, the patience to guide, and the kindness to care for others. Ayanna watched him from her blanket, her eyes filled with gratitude and a quiet admiration. She knew that with Ethan by their side, the journey ahead would be safer, brighter, and filled with hope. The plains were vast and wild, but together, they would face whatever came next. And somewhere deep inside, she felt a small spark of something new, an unexpected trust, and maybe even a beginning of love, growing quietly in the heart of the wild, endless land. The next morning, the sun rose gently over the horizon, filling the small grove with warm golden light. Birds sang in the trees, and the soft rush of the nearby stream added a peaceful rhythm to the quiet of dawn. Ethan Calloway stood near the edge of the grove, scanning the landscape for the safest path ahead. He had spent years navigating these plains, and every detail mattered: the direction of the wind, the tracks in the dirt, the rustle of grass signaling movement. Ayanna stirred, waking her daughters first. They yawned and stretched, rubbing their eyes sleepily. Ethan walked over with a small bundle of fresh water and dried fruit he had gathered during the night. "Here," he said gently, offering it to the girls. "Eat something before we start walking." The girls accepted the food eagerly, their small hands taking the pieces as their mother watched with a soft smile. "You've been very kind to us," she said to Ethan. "Not just today, but all the time since we met you. I don't know how to thank you enough." Ethan shrugged modestly. "No need to thank me," he said. "We're all just trying to survive and help each other along the way. That's what matters." The family began their journey, moving carefully through the rolling hills and tall grass. Ethan led the way, watching for any signs of danger or difficult terrain. He paused occasionally to let Ayanna and the girls catch up, or to point out interesting sights along the path. A rabbit darting into its burrow, a hawk circling high above, the delicate flowers that bloomed at the edge of a stream. As they walked, Ayanna started to ask questions about Ethan's life. "Have you always lived in these lands?" she asked, curiosity in her voice. Ethan smiled faintly. "Most of my life," he replied. "I learned from my father, and my father learned from his father. The plains teach you many things: how to find water, how to read the wind, how to survive. But they also teach you patience and respect for everything around you." Ayanna listened quietly, fascinated by his words. There was something in the way he spoke, calm, steady, and confident, that drew her in. She realized that beyond his skill and bravery, Ethan had a kind heart and a deep understanding of the world that made her feel safe. The girls ran ahead for a while, laughing and chasing each other through the grass. Ethan and Ayanna walked together, sharing small stories and quiet smiles. For the first time in many days, Ayanna felt a sense of peace. She knew the journey was still dangerous, but with Ethan by their side, she trusted that they could face whatever came next. Around midday, they came across a narrow ravine with a rushing stream at the bottom. The water sparkled in the sunlight, but the path across was slippery and uneven. Ethan studied it carefully. "We'll need to cross carefully," he said. "Hold hands and follow my steps." He led the way, stepping from rock to rock, testing each one for stability. Ayanna followed with the girls, moving slowly and carefully. At one point, the youngest girl slipped slightly, but Ethan was there immediately, holding out his hand and steadying her. She clung to him tightly for a moment, then smiled shyly as they continued across. "See," Ethan said softly. "Nothing to worry about. Just take it slow." Ayanna watched him, admiration growing in her heart. He was brave, yes, but also patient and careful. He didn't rush, he didn't panic, and he treated her daughters with respect and gentleness. She realized that his courage wasn't just in facing danger, it was in how he cared for others while facing it. As the afternoon wore on, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. Ethan noticed the change immediately. The wind had shifted. The air smelled like rain, and the distant hills were shadowed under the gathering storm. "We need to find shelter soon," he said, urgency in his voice. Ayanna scanned the area and saw a small cave nestled in the side of a hill. "There," she pointed. "We can take the girls there." Ethan nodded, leading them quickly but carefully to the cave. Inside, they were safe from the wind and the first drops of rain. He gathered some dry wood he had brought with him and started a small fire near the entrance, keeping it low but warm. The girls huddled close to Ayanna, while Ethan checked the cave for any signs of danger, loose rocks, unstable surfaces, or wildlife. Once he was satisfied, he finally allowed himself to relax. "We'll be safe here for the night," he said. "The storm shouldn't last long." Ayanna watched him as he moved, noticing the quiet efficiency in his actions. There was no rush, no panic, just calm determination. She realized that this calm strength was what she admired most about him. As the storm raged outside, they sat together near the fire. Ethan told small stories to the girls, keeping their spirits up, while Ayanna listened, occasionally adding a detail or two about her own experiences. The storm made the night feel long, but in the warmth of the firelight, they felt safe, connected, and even cheerful. At one point, the girls fell asleep, exhausted from the day's journey. Ayanna leaned back, her eyes meeting Ethan's across the firelight. "You've done more than keep us safe," she said quietly. "You've given us hope." Ethan looked at her, surprised by the depth of her words. "Hope?" he asked gently. "Yes," she replied. I was so afraid yesterday, afraid of losing them, afraid of being alone. But you reminded me that there are good people, and that we can survive even the hardest paths." Ethan nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. He had always believed in helping others, in facing challenges with courage, but hearing it expressed so plainly made him realize something deeper, how much one person's care and courage could change another's life. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The only sounds the soft crackle of the fire and the distant rumble of the storm. Ayanna's heart was calm, and her mind was filled with gratitude and admiration. She felt a quiet trust growing, a belief that Ethan was not just a rescuer, but someone she could rely on completely. Finally, as the storm passed and the first signs of dawn appeared, Ethan and Ayanna stood outside the cave. The plains glistened with fresh rain, and the air smelled sweet and clean. The girls ran ahead, laughing as they explored the wet grass. Ethan turned to Ayanna. "We have a long way ahead," he said. "But with courage, care, and patience, we'll get there safely." Ayanna smiled, feeling a warmth in her heart. "Yes," she agreed. "And I'm glad you're with us." Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction. Their bond had grown stronger through the journey, through the shared challenges and the moments of care and trust. He realized that the Wild West was full of dangers. Yes, but it was also full of opportunities to show courage, build trust, and create connections that could last a lifetime. As they continued their journey, the plains stretched out before them, wide, wild, and full of possibility. But now, Ethan, Ayanna, and her daughters moved together, a family in their own way, ready to face whatever lay ahead. And in the heart of the vast, untamed land, a quiet hope blossomed, hope for safety, trust, and perhaps the beginnings of love. The morning sun broke over the distant hills, spilling gold across the plains. The air was crisp and fresh, carrying the scent of wet grass and wildflowers from the previous day's storm. Ethan Calloway led Ayanna and her daughters across the final stretch of the journey toward a nearby settlement he had scouted from the hilltops. It was not far now, but the last miles were always the hardest, as anticipation mixed with fatigue. The girls walked hand in hand with their mother, skipping along the path whenever they could. Their laughter filled the air, a melody of relief and joy. For the first time since being separated during the storm, they felt truly safe. Ethan rode alongside them, keeping a careful watch on the surroundings, though his mind was at ease. He had guided them this far, and nothing in the vast land seemed capable of stopping them now. Ayanna walked quietly beside him, glancing at the strong, dependable figure of the man who had become their protector. She had felt trust grow over the past days, and with it, something deeper, an admiration for his calm courage, his gentle patience, and the way he always put others first. For the first time, She allowed herself to imagine a future where they could face the plains together, as a family. As the settlement came into view, small houses and cabins nestled between the rolling hills, the girls squealed in delight. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the sounds of daily life, chickens clucking, distant laughter, and the creak of wagon wheels welcomed them. It was a sight that brought tears to Ayana's eyes, for she had feared losing her daughters to the dangers of the Wild West. But now, they were nearly home. Ethan slowed his horse and dismounted. "We're close," he said. "The families here are kind. They'll help you settle in and make sure you have everything you need." Ayana nodded, gripping her daughter's hands. "I can't thank you enough," she said softly. "You've saved them. Saved me. I don't know what we would have done without you." Ethan shook his head. "It's nothing. You were brave too. You never gave up. And you kept your children together. That's what truly matters." The family entered the settlement together, and villagers began to notice them. People came forward with smiles, offering water, food, and assistance. The girls ran toward their extended family, who had arrived in anxious search for them after hearing news of their disappearance. Hugs and tears of relief were exchanged, and the little family finally felt complete again. Ethan watched the reunion quietly, his heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. He had done what he came to do, and more than that. He had seen the power of human courage and care. The girls were safe, their mother was relieved, and a community stood ready to support them. Ayana approached him once the initial excitement had settled. "Come with us," she said softly. "Stay for a while. You've been part of our lives now. The girls, they love you." Ethan hesitated for a moment, looking at the small, welcoming community, then at Ayana, whose eyes held quiet hope. He realized that over the past days, he had grown attached not just to the children but to her as well. Her courage, her kindness, and her quiet strength had left a mark on him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt the pull of something he had rarely allowed himself to feel: belonging. I think I'd like that," he said finally, a small smile breaking across his face. "I'd like to stay." Ayana's smile mirrored his, warm and genuine. She reached out, gently taking his hand. "Then you will," she said. "You've already become part of our family." The days that followed were filled with activity. Ethan helped the family settle into their home, working alongside villagers to repair fences, gather supplies, and plant small gardens. The girls showed him all the spots they loved, introducing him to their friends, laughing as they ran through the fields. Ethan laughed with them, feeling a joy he had not realized he had missed. Ayana and Ethan spent quiet moments together, talking about the past, the journey, and the future. They shared stories by the fire, cooked simple meals side by side, and explored the surrounding land. Each day strengthened the bond between them, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. It was a slow, steady connection, one that grew naturally without force or hurry. One afternoon, while helping the girls collect water from the stream, Ayana turned to him. "I was afraid, you know," she said quietly. "Afraid I might never see them again. Afraid I might not survive the plains alone." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "You're strong," he said. "You faced the land, the storm, and you never gave up. You've done more than you realize." Tom. 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 Ayana looked into his eyes, seeing the truth in his words. "And yet," she whispered, "you were the one who carried us through the worst. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to," he said softly. "Just stay safe. Keep your daughters close. And be happy. That's enough for me." Days turned into weeks, and life in the settlement settled into a comfortable rhythm. The girls thrived, playing in the fields, attending lessons, and exploring safely under Ethan and Ayana's watchful eyes. Ayana and Ethan's bond continued to grow, strengthened by shared responsibilities, quiet understanding, and mutual respect. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of red and gold. Ethan and Ayanna sat together outside the home, watching the girls run through the fields. "I never imagined," she said softly, "that in such a short time, someone could mean so much." Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady and warm. "Sometimes," he said, "life brings the right people at the right time. And when it does, you realize how much stronger and braver you can be with them by your side." Ayanna reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I feel that," she said, her voice filled with quiet emotion. "You've given me hope, and courage, and something more." Ethan smiled, feeling a quiet happiness he had rarely known. "Then I'll stay," he said, "not just to protect your daughters, but to be here with you. We'll face the plains together, whatever comes next." Ayanna leaned her head on his shoulder, and the two of them watched the girls laughing in the distance, safe and happy. In that moment, they both knew that their journey had not only brought them through danger, but had also built a foundation for a new life, one filled with trust, love, and courage. The Wild West was still vast and wild, full of challenges and surprises. But Ethan, Ayanna, and her daughters had discovered something far more important: the strength of human kindness, the courage to face the unknown, and the power of connection that could turn even the harshest lands into a place of hope and belonging. As night fell and stars began to twinkle in the sky, Ethan looked out over the plains, feeling a sense of peace. They were safe, together, and ready for the future. The journey had been difficult, but it had shown them the best of what humanity could offer: bravery, care, and the courage to love. And so, in the quiet of the Wild West, under the blanket of countless stars, a new chapter began for Ethan, Ayanna, and her daughters. A chapter filled with hope, trust, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow, where courage and kindness would guide them through every challenge. Side by side,